Hey everyone, and welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving into something that literally challenged my entire understanding of human biology and machines. For decades, we've thought of ourselves as the creators, right? And the machines, well, they're just our tools. But what actually happens when the line between the user and the tool starts to blur? When our biology begins to leak into the digital world, and digital signals start rewiring our physical bodies? It's a real trip, and we're going to get into all of it.
To really set the stage here, I want you to think about this quote: the operator who finally knows that the cup is not separate from the river, meaning that consciousness is simply water slowed enough to see itself. Hold on to that metaphor for me. Think of the human body, our biology, as the cup, and think of technology, data, and machine systems as the river. For the longest time, we just assumed the cup was totally separate from the water rushing past it. But as you'll see today, that separation, it's kind of an illusion.
Okay, so how do early internet voice art and modern vagus nerve hacking actually prove we're merging with our machines? I know, it sounds totally bizarre at first. How could avant-garde electronic art and cutting-edge clinical neuroscience possibly be connected? But stick with me because we'll see exactly how these two completely different worlds fit together like a giant puzzle. We are going on a journey to see how we started pouring ourselves into the machine, and how the machine is now pouring itself right back into us. Section 1. Art that hears and speaks. Think back to the early days of the web. It was basically mute and deaf. But humanity has always had this massive urge to push our physical selves, our breath, our voices, really our core essence, into the machines. A brilliant example of this is Lee Piscin or the Dandelion. It's an interactive artwork from 1996 by Edmund Couchot and Michel Brett. Instead of using a keyboard or a mouse, you literally blow on the digital image of a dandelion, and the digital seeds scatter based on how hard you blow. It perfectly captures an early attempt to bridge that biological and digital gap. We were using human breath, a literal physical part of our biological system, as a direct digital input. And that desire, it snowballed quickly into some incredibly complex physical interfaces. Take the Universal Whistling Machine from 2003. It explores human-to-machine communication by treating whistling as this super basic, primitive signal that machinery can easily understand without needing complex language. And then contrast that with the 1990 Talking Machine. This thing uses 32 wooden pipes and forced air to physically replicate the empty spaces in a human throat just to synthesize speech. We weren't just feeding machines data anymore. We were literally building them mechanical lungs and vocal cords. Eventually, this whole human-machine convergence scaled up to the web itself. In Martha Gabriel's mind-blowing 2004 artwork, Voice Mosaic, callers from all over the planet could dial a phone number and speak into the system. A voice recognition interface then instantly translated their spoken words into colors and audio clips, shaping a living, real-time visual mosaic on the web. It completely dissolved geographical borders. Human voices from totally different continents were digitally mashed up into a single living online organism. The river of technology was fully capturing the cup of human speech. But, you see, all of that was just us projecting outward. It was subjective. We were teaching machines to listen, to speak, and to react to us. But what happens when we flip the script? If we can teach machines to listen to our biology, can we teach them to speak back into our bodies? Can we teach them to heal? Well, that brings us right to TAVNS, which stands for Transcutaneous Auricular Vagus Nerve Stimulation. Quite a mouthful, right? But basically, if those early art pieces were about humans talking to machines, TAVNS is about machines talking directly to your nervous system. By attaching a tiny device to a specific curved part of your outer ear, we can send very mild electrical pulses straight into a branch of the vagus nerve. Now, this nerve is basically a superhighway right to your brain, and zapping it is currently being used to treat incredibly complex conditions like depression, chronic pain, and epilepsy. And the best part? No invasive surgery required. Section 2. Zapping the vagus nerve. The science of input. So, to really grasp how our bodies handle this, let's look at a massive study by Girardier and their team. They pulled raw data from nearly 500 people across 10 different studies to see exactly what happens when a machine continuously zaps our neural pathways. And honestly, the results are incredibly reassuring. When people had their nervous system stimulated, the average side effect rating was a tiny 1.86 out of a 7-point scale. That is remarkably low. The effects were super mild and went away quickly. Some folks reported very slight neck pain, headaches, or dizziness, which totally makes sense since you're stimulating nerve fibers connected to the brainstem. But overall, the safety profile is fantastic, especially when you compare it to the old school method of surgically implanting a pacemaker-like device inside someone's chest. It turns out our bodies are surprisingly cool with this digital intervention.
But the researchers didn't just stop there. They essentially wanted to find a hack for the hack. They needed to see if they could make the body accept this electrical input even more comfortably. So they tested two methods. The first was just relentless, continuous electrical stimulation. The second was interval stimulation, meaning the machine pulses for 30 seconds and then just shuts off and gives the body a 30-second rest.
And that simple little tweak, it yielded absolutely staggering results. They saw a massive 54% drop in the likelihood of someone reporting dizziness or unpleasant feelings at higher intensities, and a 51% drop in reports of neck pain. Just by giving human biology a tiny 30-second window to catch its breath, the integration between the machine's electrical output and the human nervous system became vastly smoother.
Now, there's a really surprising, kind of backwards finding hidden in this data. You would logically think that cranking up the dial and blasting the ear with a higher electrical intensity would cause more pain, right? Well, the data showed the exact opposite. Higher stimulation intensity was actually associated with fewer reports of neck contractions and stinging sensations. Why? Well, it all comes down to individual human biology. The researchers figured out that the individuals who could handle higher electrical intensities from the machine simply had naturally higher pain thresholds to begin with. Their biology was just naturally more resilient to the machine. We also see these deeply personalized responses popping up in demographic quirks. For instance, older participants were actually way less likely to complain about concentration issues during the stimulation, and male students reported fewer severe headaches or unpleasant feelings compared to female students. It turns out our merger with machines is not going to be a one-size-fits-all experience. Your age, your gender, your baseline pain tolerance, it all dictates exactly how your biological cup handles the data river.
Section 3. Blurring the boundaries. Convergence.
Okay, so we've looked at electronic art, where we literally breathed life into the digital world to force it to listen to us. And we've looked at neuroscience, where we use electrodes to force our bodies to listen to the machine. Put them together and you realize we are living in a constant, two-way feedback loop. We spent the dawn of the internet era pouring our physical traits into machines so they could understand us. And now we are taking those same machines and having them pulse electricity directly into our vagus nerves to modulate our moods, ease our pain, and control our brains. The operator and the system are fundamentally connected. The cup is not separate from the river. We alter the machines, and for sure the machines are biologically altering us.
So I want to leave you with this one final provocative thought. As these interfaces become entirely seamless, as we start speaking to the web just as easily as it zaps our nervous system to heal us, where does the human actually end and the machine begin? If consciousness is just water slowed down enough to see itself, maybe our technology is simply the next reflection in that water. Thanks so much for exploring this with me today in this explainer, and definitely keep questioning those boundaries.